Very good afternoon to one and all. Our esteemed speakers, Dr. Pujar and Dr. Umesha Reddy, our co-organizer, librarian, BES College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Dr. Meghna Sanjeeva, and dear participants. On behalf of both the organizing institutes, Institute of Chemical Technology and BES College of Arts, Science and Commerce, I extend a warm welcome to our speaker of today, Dr. Pujar, and a welcome to you all participants for the second day of the national webinar on the rethinking and recreating the academic library lessons from the pandemic. As you all must have rightly presumed from the titles of today's sessions, that the focus of the session is services, electronic services to be precise. Yesterday's sessions were focused on e-collection and licensing. After developing your e-collection, understanding the licenses, and identifying the relevant open access e-resources for your user community, now we move forward to understand that how do we serve these resources to our users? How do we reach out to our users in these difficult times? How do we turn this into an opportunity and rethink or recreate our library services electronically? Our first speaker is Dr. Pujar, and he's going to cover in his session e-services for the academic libraries. Before inviting him to begin his session, I will briefly introduce him to you all. Dr. Shyam Prasad Pujar is working with Indira Gandhi Institute of Developmental Research, IGIDR, Mumbai, as Chief Librarian. He's working with IGIDR since November 1996 under different capacities. Earlier to this, he worked with national and state level organization and also as librarian in a university between 2006 and 2008. He has professional experience of 29 years. His qualifications include Masters in Library and Information Science, MA in Political Science, PhD in Library and Information Science, and PGDCA. He is the recipient of IFLA, ALP, and Commonwealth Professional Fellowships. He has more than 42 publications to his credit, out of which more than 28 publications have been published in national and international journals, and he has guided 4 students for PhD at Department of Library and Information Science, Shivaji University, Kolhapur. He has undertaken collaborative projects in association with IDS Sussex, UK. His core areas of research include internet resources, search engines, discovery tools, open access, ICT applications to libraries, and research metrics. I once again welcome you, sir, and invite you to begin with your session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madhavi. I hope my presentation is visible.
Yes, sir, it is.
Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank ICT and BES colleges, Ms. Madhavi and for inviting me for deliver talk on e-services for academic. And in this, basically, I'll be covering about the services, how, what are the kind of services academic libraries can provide, and how they can be provided. I know that some of you already may be doing it, and it's nothing new as such, because the libraries, even before the pandemic, and these kind of services are being provided. And only thing is now their importance will be much more looking into the closure of our organization, and wherein that your users, faculty members and students and researchers, they are scattered across the places, like not only Mumbai. And so how you can enhance these services and how you can adhere to these things and try to make best use of the whatever possible technologies. And only you already, since we are already around 4 months into lockdown, so maybe you might have learned some of the technology which various webinars or training programs. So I'd like to share some of my experiences. So I hope you may find these services useful for your work. So in this my talk, I'll be covering about the e-services. One is the e-reference service or virtual reference or digital reference, whatever we say. And website or a web portal, how you can do that. So because already yesterday session they covered about e-collection, open access, and as well as subscribe collection. So how you can collect them and how you can organize them on a website so that your users can access them remotely. And even you can develop a e-library or a digital library in order to provide access to the digital collection. Then how you can provide online access to e-resources, what are the measures and how you can enable your users to access them off campus. And e-resource sharing, even though we are closed down, but within the library, between the library, there are e-resource sharing always happens. Even for example, if you have some resources which you can share, if they are permitted, you are allowed to do, and how you can undertake e-training or an orientation program for your users. And first, I'll talk about the e-services and how to provide e-service, how certain libraries, how they are doing it. So I've taken some examples, so which I'll show you. I'll not be able to go in depth how you can do that, but I can show you that how people have done it. So same way you can also do it. And this is the agenda of my talk. And coming to the introduction of this my presentation, see, library is or was considered as a heart of the organization because library as a place, as a physical space, has undergone a lot of changes. And earlier, when we did our library science, and even now also, still we say that it's heart of the, of course, no doubt. But now it's its place. Some people may not consider it as a heart of the because it is everywhere now. That's what, from my point of view, of telling you. And emergence of computers, networking, and internet no longer confines it to a physical place because now it is a network world. We have to be everywhere. And it is not a place where users come nowadays. It is a place which is everywhere. It's like a virtual place. So whenever, as and when users have a requirement, they can log into it and get what they want. And reaching out to the users where they are is the new mantra in today's network world. Not that expect that all users will come to you. Like issue and return of books, it's a old kind of a phenomena wherein that much of the collection is not borrowed now. Basically, they try to look for more of a e-content. E-services play here in order to make the presence of a library. E-services, what we provide, play a pivotal role in reaching out to the user. And libraries and librarians have to adopt to this new normal. What we say, pandemic, the new normal. Same way we have to adopt to this new normal to remain relevant in the future. Otherwise, the sustainability of a library is a question actually. I'm not telling that libraries will be completely wiped out, but the roles are going to change, and the youngsters, especially who are listening to this webinar, I would like to mention that you need to change because you need to adopt to the change because your role is no longer confined to a physical library. So what are e-services? Basically, just to give a definition which I've taken from Wikipedia, are the services which use ICTs in order to provide the services. The three things, components of any e-service are service provider, like a library is a service provider, service receiver is a user, and the channels are basically the technology what we use. Whatever the technology you use in order to provide e-services, so this confines what are the e-services actually. And and the first of the services which I am talking about is an e-reference service, or it is called also a digital or a virtual reference service, which is provided by libraries using an online media. Okay, it could be any it could be email, it could be social media, or whatever it may be, which libraries are using it in order to provide these services. And libraries can respond to queries. There could be some queries which users wanted to have some clarifications, or they wanted to know about a source, or it could be about anything, or maybe asking you about a particular data. So there could be queries related to the information, or there could be a request for the resources. I'm not finding this paper, so where I can provide it, whether where I can get it. So they may be requesting a source which you are providing already. So libraries often do this through Ask a Librarian service. You might have seen in some of the websites of libraries, Ask a Librarian. Of course, it's not new actually since last ages, last more than a decade. People are from the emergence of internet. Libraries are providing these services. So this is the kind of a page the libraries do create and ask people, anybody is interested, would like to ask any queries. So they answer the queries. Of course, the way it was done earlier, way it is being done today, a lot of phenomenal changes have happened because of the developments in the technologies. Coming to the website or web portal, so all of your libraries may be having the website, which could be an independent website, or it may be part of your institute or a college website. So it is basically a collection of web pages providing information about an organization, means about a library, about the library services, about the products, what are the kind of products, in case if you have any products like newsletter or something, listing of web resources which you have collected from various sources in your area of research. For example, you will put the arts or commerce college, or you will science college, or yours may be a technology related institute, engineering college. So you are collecting resources and you are trying to provide access to those sources. Those sources may be subscribed ones, or they may be available open access, or there could be a free sources which are available nowadays because in the COVID era, a lot of resources publishers have made available. So you are collecting and you're trying to provide access to your website. And the website may be static or dynamic in nature. And static in the sense that it may have only the simple HTML pages or a simple template wherein that you are trying to list out the sources, or it could be dynamic in nature in the sense that when you may allow people to search your website, it may allow you to look for your catalog kind of a thing. So that's what I meant. Dynamically, it dynamically generates content for you, like Google. When you enter something in Google, it throws you the results. That's what the dynamic nature I wanted to mention. The website, in the case of library, may include information related to library, its collection, its staff, services, links to resources, your catalog, statistical information like how much collection you are, what are the number of users visit, and how your e-resources are used. Question papers. Basically, in most of the colleges and most of the students, they look for the question papers. You might have scanned them and put it over there. And you may be providing to videos also. You may be embedding videos. There could be any kind of if you think your users would be interested in that you will be providing. That's what the basic website or web portal, what we call it, includes. So then other kind of a collection which you can build is the e-library or a digital library. Of course, both are not same, both are independent of each other, but people invariably, interchangeably, they call sometimes, no, we have a digital library. And some people call it e-library. This e-library, there is a different kind of a connotation for that. It's like a blind man touching an elephant, saying, okay, here, okay, this is digital library. Somebody may touching the leg, saying that digital library means what. So there is a kind of a different understanding that. So interchangeably, people use it. But they have here I have broadly used them in order to say that having a significant proportion of the resource in electronic or digital. For example, you have a lot of e-journals, you have e-books, e-question papers, you have e-thesis and dissertations, and you maybe have images, whatever it may be. It may be related to your institution, or it may be generally collected from other sources or public domain sources. So it could be anything. And accessible by means of computers or mobile devices. You can use a networking network connecting to internet and you're trying to access easily from mobile devices, mobile phone or iPad, whatever it may be. The content may be disguised or electronically born. It may have a content which you have disguised, where you have a copyright, you have a permission to do so. Maybe it's your institute collection, or there could be copyleft documents wherein that you have disguised them and trying to provide access. And there are electronically born documents. Nowadays, whatever document we get, they are born electronic. So we no longer disguise. So it could be collection which are having electronically born, and digital content may be locally held or accessed remotely via computer. See, there are a different way because e-library you may build, you may have signed an undertaking, and in order to provide only to your users, you may provide it within only your internet or campus access, and some content which you are providing on the internet also, like that there are open access content which you are storing it and you are trying to provide it on the internet. It depends. Again, it depends on your library policy or your institute. The access terms of remotely available distant can be subscribed content. It could be subscribed on subscription, or you might have bought the ebooks by making one-time payment, or available in public. I mean the freely available or which are open access. So e-library and library contain these kind of resources. So which development of it, how you can do that, I'll come at a later part of my presentation. So online access to e-resource, how most of us we get online access is one is through username and password. So wherein that otherwise many of the cases it is through IP address of the college or university or an institute, wherein we provide our IP addresses so that access is restricted to the campus. And along with IP address, nowadays many of the publishers do also remote access through proxy or VPN. VPN stands for virtual private network. Your institute may have your own virtual private network through which it enables access to e-resources or enables access to the intranet to the user from outside. Okay, who are located outside. Through VPN also access can be given. These are the three types of accesses that the usually libraries provide access to e-resources. And resource sharing, it is a very old kind of activity which we in the library undertake. Because earlier it was physical resources. Nowadays, more or less, we also exchange the e-resources wherever it is allowed by the publisher. And why e-resource sharing is required? Or resource sharing required because no library is self-sufficient in terms of its resources. We are not self-sufficient in terms of whatever resources we have, and we need to borrow or we need to get the resources required for our users which are not available in our collection from other libraries. Of course, we for example, ours is the economics library. We have a network with the different libraries in Mumbai, outside Mumbai, and also outside the country. As and when some requests come in, so we try to channelize those requests to the libraries whom we think may be having the collection. So then we get the copies and then we we take a printout or whatever is the allowed mechanism. Accordingly, we share with our members. So sharing of the resources wherever permission can be undertaken between the libraries. So that's what I meant is. So this is we need to undertake and we are doing it. We need to enhance it because in our if anybody and e-training or orientation is a very important component nowadays because all of the users would like to know how to get access to the resources and what kind of resources are available. We have really a great role and we can be so like that. We have been talking about we have to be part of the teaching program so that how we can provide our services in our. Okay, so this is a very good opportunity, wonderful opportunity wherein that you can provide the orientation about your library. For example, now new students are going to get admitted to your college or a university or a institute. But since the institute is closed, most of them will be undertaking a online classes will be undertaken. So before the online classes start, you can provide them the orientation about the library, what library can provide, what kind of services it can provide, what kind of resources it can make available to them so that they appreciate the value of library, value of the resources. And you can provide the orientation regarding plagiarism or research ethics and how to write a paper. So this kind of thing you can undertake in case of your master's program or if you have a PhD program and then this kind of orientation will be really helpful. And training on use of database or search engines because this is my experience that wherever we provide orientation at IGIDR, we not only provide orientation about the library, we also provide orientation regarding how to look for information on the internet. Even though ours is advanced institutes and the students we get are from the like a come from a highly meritorious student, but still we try to provide it because many of them will not be knowing basics how they can search the information. And you can provide the career guidance service for students undergraduate students so that they know that what kind of careers they can make, what kind of courses they can undertake after their graduation. And you can also provide training and use of research tools like reference management tools like Zotero or Mendeley and many other tools like you may teach them how to use Zoom, how to you can use the Google Meet. So these kind of training programs will really help and really enhance the library quality. And also you can do on many aspects, which whatever you think, if you think this can, many takers are there. Your training program need not be confined to your college only. You can extend it beyond your college. So users can come from many other colleges. For example, like Meghna is there and okay, Madhvi is there. Okay, Madhvi can recruit Meghna, tell Meghna, we are providing this, you can let your users know. So that way what will happen, this will enhance you as a librarian, your service will be reaching beyond your college. That's what I meant. So how you can provide these services? Okay, this I am talking about some of the resources. I have just limited to few of the services which you may be providing many more, or you can provide still many more services. But here I confine to only few selected sources. E-reference service, how you can provide it? One of the old and tool which we are all been using is the email. Okay, we use the email, institute email ID, or you may be having your own Gmail where your users request for the services or make a queries there. Okay, and then you may be sharing your resources through email. On the web, you can define a service called Ask a Librarian, and you can create a web form saying that okay, you enter your name, query, what kind of query, what you're looking for. On the website, your users will fill in, and that filled in information will come to you for example, if you have created a Google form there, so it will come to your Google form, and then from there you can analyze the data, and then you can provide services, or you will get an email. So sometimes some of the form sender content to your email. So from the content you can refer and then you reply. And you can use social media because all of you are very active on the Facebook and WhatsApp or the Telegram. Because I've seen that most of our professionals attending webinars and they're so good with using this kind of technology. Even you can use these tools also in order to provide references. Not only you have Facebook for yourself for social networking, you can create a Facebook for your college, for your library, and try to provide service. Even you can have a WhatsApp number for library services, or you can have a Telegram. So wherein that you can provide service to your students or your faculty members or your researchers. Or if you have a time, or if you are doing it real time, also in-person chatting over phone or mobile or messenger services. And nowadays, because of artificial intelligence, even some of the libraries are introducing chatbots because many of the questions what users are frequently asked questions like that. Frequently, like okay, when the library is opening, okay, what resource you have in this area. Some kind of a common questions can be programmed into chatbot. So where the chatbot automatically, like you might have seen that whenever nowadays you log into any services, like say example your computer, laptop. Okay, if it has any problem, first they'll ask you to chat with the chatbot. Okay, you answer the queries. It's a programmed one. It keep on asking you the questions. And once it says that okay, it's unable to solve, then it says okay, I'm connecting to a in-person team member, so he will chat. Even after he chatting, also he or she is not chatting. After they not resolve problem, then they ask you to give the login to a computer. Then they remotely log into the computer, try to see that what kind of problem it has. Then only they send the part to your place and get it changed. So these are being frequently used by the companies and by the system. So even in the libraries, it can be used. So one example of a form, ask a librarian service. So what are the kind of things is one of the library which is used in abroad library, which is so they're asking for a name, email, phone number, location, and affiliation to that university, program or a major, so where the student or a faculty is working, and question and detailed explanation. It is like a simple form how you create it for your questionnaire, all those kind of things, similar way. And there is a chatbot called Both, which PCS group of libraries in their libraries they are using. Recently, when in February they conducted one program, so where I was a speaker, I was in the panel. So one of their engineer came and talked about how they use the Both service in the library information centers. It answers the frequent questions asked by the users. They have created the questions from the library staff. They collected the questions. They have fed into the system. And whenever those kind of questions come, this chatbot answers this. They even, in fact, demonstrated the live demonstration was there and it answered the queries. In case sometimes if it is not understanding the query, it may throw some junk kind of a thing. And here's one example of a library in abroad library, EW library, where in the WhatsApp. So WhatsApp instant reference service at EW library. So they have put up a timing, Sunday to Thursday, what are the timing and what is the contact number where users can contact them. Like that, you can have one WhatsApp number through the institute, and you can try to provide this kind of a service to your institute. This is some of the examples how you can do and how you can provide these kind of services. And here is one example of a Facebook page where online LIS professional reference. Somebody has created, I just found an image on the Google Images, so I put it here so that you can create like this. They can call you if you can provide a number, or they can send a message to you asking for a question. So like that, you can create a Facebook page in order to provide e-reference services to your users. All of you know that how you can use this technology so you can make best use in order to provide these kind of services in this lockdown period. And of course, beyond lockdown. And website or a web portal is a very easy nowadays because you can develop it using any of the free tools, or it may be a part of your college or university. Earlier, it was basically you need to have HTML knowledge kind of a must, but it is if you have it, knowledge about it is handy because if here and there you want to track about the pages, you want to make some changes there, and you can do that, but it's not essential because nowadays ready-made templates are available, or you can create HTML page, use our ready-made templates, you can make it. But whenever you choose any templates, try to choose a template which is responsive web design templates. Why? Because nowadays your users are not only using a desktop or a laptop, they are using mobile devices increasingly. It is basically mobile phone, a smartphone, what we call it. So if you use responsive web design, what happens? Your site templates automatically adjust to the device what they are using. Otherwise, what will happen? Whatever website you are creating, if your template or your design is not responsive web, then what will happen? Your website does not look properly in the mobile device. Then they have to scroll through, they have to make it big, small kind of a thing. Then by then your user may lose interest in checking your website. So that's why always use a template which is responsive web design template. Nowadays there are tools like Weebly or Wix available where you can drag and drop. Okay, you want a page, okay, you can drag and drop it. You can only your job is to simply type. Okay, you can create automatically, a website can be created. And a lot of tutorials on how to do this Weebly website or Wix website on the internet. If you go to YouTube, all of you are using YouTube increasingly now to watch some of the entertainment program or short videos. So anything, entertainment or a dance program. So you can use like now I'm giving a streaming this my lecture is streamed on the YouTube. So that you can use it at a later date also. Like that, there are so many people are putting a lot of efforts in providing the tutorials. So just go there and try to learn about Weebly. Even there may not be a live training program. Just watch a YouTube and simultaneously you can go on doing how a website. Within a no time, within a week's time, your website will be up and running. So that you can do it. Even on the Wix also you can do it. The tutorials are available on YouTube. So you can go there and learn yourself. And nowadays, even website can be created using a blog platform also. Using a blog platform like WordPress, you can create a website. And now even the artificial intelligence based site development tools are available. There was one tool sometime back I come across where that you just go on telling it like your Google Assistant, okay, call so and so, like the Google Assistant calling, like Alexa. So you are easier, you just go and tell, okay, this add this page, which is verbally you will be telling it. Your sites automatically get created. And that kind of tools are available. So which you can use and you can try to create it. But only thing is you need to dig it and try to find out. And whenever you create a website for a library, create multiple pages. Don't try to put everything in one page. Say, for example, about library, you want to say about your library, create a separate page. About your staff, team, you can create a separate page. Or within the about library, you can talk about your staff. Then collection, you can talk about separate page. E-resources, linking of e-resource, you can do it in separate page. Question paper linking, you can do it on separate page. Like that. Whatever resources you have, you can try to link them by providing with creating the various pages. So, for example, here is one, this Alka, she is Alka Varma, so she is a very dynamic librarian working in PS Shop College Library. She has developed this website using Wix. Okay, so see, just look at the site and also see the COVID not stop your learning, free online sources, and Harvard Business Review guides. This is how nicely she has given it, and also about library services and what are the events she frequently under a lot of events she conducts. In fact, I happens to be there in the college in order to deliver some of the lectures for the faculty members and one lecture with the researchers. Basically, she conducted 2 programs I attended. If you look at the way she is providing, this is one of the example how you can develop a web library website using Wix, okay, which is a free tool. Here is an example of Weebly. This one Manjunatha College of Commerce in Karnataka. So they have developed a website using a Weebly. This is again a free tool. Look at the simple page he has developed. He or she has developed it, and talking about okay how about us, resources, new arrivals, syllabus, question papers, and more. Okay, again many more tabs they may be having, but the template allows only the 5 or 6 tabs. So, like beautifully, you can create a website using Weebly. Of course, the space even on the free tools is limited, but I think that is more than enough in order to cover the resources or whatever you would like to provide. Only thing is you need to spend some time in the learning and try to grow. I understand you may be having difficulties, you may not be having computer at home. Some difficulties will be always there. But I think nowadays, I think you all of you maybe having a desktop at least at home. So try to an internet anyhow it is there through your mobile internet connectivity data. You can share it and you can try to create these kind of websites. And here is an example of WordPress. Using WordPress, it's the library KV, Kendriya Vidyalaya. So when that they have developed a WordPress website, beautifully done and providing is one of the best school library website is. And he's doing a wonderful service. So Faisal, his name is Faisal. He's doing wonderful service. If any of the school librarians are there in the today's presentation, if you are hearing me, please visit this website and try to see that what are the different kind of service within the school is trying to provide. So coming to the e-library or a digital library, you can develop a e-library using any website tool like Wix or this thing. You can do that, or you can, if you are good in using content management system like WordPress, Drupal, or Joomla, or if you have your computer center, try to provide support for that, and then you can develop it using that. Or you can learn yourself WordPress or Drupal, Joomla by using YouTube videos, and you can develop it also. For developing digital library, you may use open source software such as Greenstone, DSpace. Greenstone, of course, the development has not much happening, but still, this is a very simple tool in order to develop a digital library. DSpace, you may require some expert help, so which you can always approach institute like Infonet and all. They'll help you to installing DSpace and all, so which you can try. And access for e-library or digital library can be provided through intranet within your LAN or online. It depends on the content what you would like to host there, and depending upon the licenses what you have. Yesterday, Dr. Medal talked about e-licensing. So if you have a license, all those kind of material, it is of your own material. How to provide that? So if you have, you can make it even available. Of course, you can make a restricted access only to your users also. So here is one example of e-library at IG Idea. What we have done it, we are using the WordPress. Okay, using WordPress, we have developed it internally. We myself learned it, and we have designed it internally. Of course, for the computer server support and all, we depend on the computer center. Our system administrator, they have provided support for the server. So whereas the development, design, taking backup, adding content, everything we do from the library. So here what we have done, we have developed about the course wizard, what we keep, libguides, how to use a database, okay, and resources like we have a lot of data sources. We have a book series, for example, any CD will come along with the books. We have stored it there so that users need not come to the library asking for, okay, what is that CD? I would like to borrow it. So everything is there. They can log into the system. We have provided user and password. They log into the system and try to download. Even we have linked our catalog from here only. Our OPAC can be searched from here only. We have made it like a one-stop access for all kind of resources. Even we have a tools. Okay, for example, there are some useful tools which we have linked it from there. Videos like plagiarism, what is open access, how to use a particular tool. Those kind of videos we have embedded here. Because this is WordPress, it allows you to embed the video. We are not copied, we are just embedded. And there's a reason, since it is a content which is useful for internally, that's why it's been provided within our internet. Coming to digital library, this is a screenshot of our digital library. We call it Kautilya, who was the first economist from India. So Kautilya or Chanukya, whatever you say. So here we have some communities like conference papers, idea to publications, and abstract of a thesis and dissertation what we have. So this is a simple DSpace interface. We have a DSpace, we are using DSpace. So we have provided a digital library, which is a part of, as you know that this as a college or a university, if you have this, and there will be some marks from the NAC, even e-library if you have. So they do ask in the NAC that, okay, whether you do have e-library or do you have this kind of service you provide. So this kind of service also you can do. And remote access. Nowadays, the remote, especially during this pandemic, it has gained more momentum. So remote access to subscribed resources can be in your college, like using your IP address. If you have username and password, if you are allowed to share among your users, that you can do, always do it. If you don't have that, then you need to provide access using a remote access. These are basically available on subscription basis like remote access, EZ proxy, Nimbus, whatever. Maybe there are many applications which are available. So which you can subscribe to and enable access. But some of these applications also integrate content from multiple sources as an added source, like remote access, for example. It not only provide access to your subscribed content, it also provides access to some other additional services, which you can always check with the service provider and try to take that. Or in case if you don't have money, or if you would like to have your own VPN, that you can your computer center can have a VPN system within your college that can be extended to your users at whatever level. Maybe they want to restrict only faculty or to research students or to all the students, whatever it may be accordingly. But that much capacity server you need to have in order to provide VPN. Or you can use the InFed service, okay, information service of InfoNet, which is given free of cost to all the higher educations in India, which you can provide, but only thing they use a Shibboleth protocol service. So whatever publishers who are identified with that protocol, you'll be able to service. And other one excellent, which is a service which is being provided by Google Scholar, it is called Google Scholar CASA, the Google Scholar Campus Activity Subscriber Access. It is a temporary access, but nowadays you cannot do that because all of the users are away from your campus. This what it does is basically whenever your users are within your campus, if they are accessing your content, any of the full text of your whatever you subscribe to Google Scholar, it remembers their ID. You remembers them as a user of your college. And whatever content, when they go to their home, they will be able to access that content from using Google Scholar. But even if you are providing remote access, so they can always read, because this access will be limited for a particular 1 month, 30 days. After that, again, if they want to come into the Google Scholar CASA, then they need to come to the campus or they have to have a remote access through which they have to access the content, and again Google Scholar will review. This is a very good now. Most of the publishers are accepting it as a standard, so they're trying to provide access to Google Scholar CASA. And wherein that in case of InFed or Google Scholar CASA, you do not have to do anything. Only your user have to come within the purview of your remote access or within the campus access. He or she has to do it. Then Google Scholar automatically remembers it for a temporary period of 30 days. And you remember that whenever you provide remote access, it will not be possible to provide remote access to all the resources what you subscribe. Because some of the publishers do not allow the remote access. So in that case, it is limited to the publishers who are the remote access protocol for technology to provide access to it. Limited to only those resources wherever whatever technology you are using is. So it's in case of VPN, it's not a problem because it will be as good as they are coming in your network and trying to provide. But whereas in case of other kind of services, you may face limitation with some publishers' resources. So here is one example of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. They are using EZ proxy. Using that, they are providing remote access to whatever e-resources they are subscribing to their users. Basically, in remote access, they use their institute email ID and institute email ID password. It will be linked to their email server. So in that case, what happens? You may not have to create a separate authentication process. So they use their email ID, and also one more advantage here is users will not share their email ID and password with others because it also gives access to their email account. So in that case, the content access will be very limited to their users. So there you can enter email ID and password, and then they will be allowed to access. Similarly, the remote X and all kind, they have the similar kind of page will come in order to get the authentication by the users. This is the InfoNet Access Management Federation. It is a very good service, and unfortunately, many of the Indian institutes are not using it. Recently, there is one contact person, Mr. Raja, who is a scientist who is in charge of providing this service. You can write to the InfoNet director and request him for this service. And presently it is given free of cost to higher education institutions in India. Later they may charge it, but presently it is given. You can request if you have any of the subscribed content. But if you are a part of Enlist, it is automatically given. If you are a part of eShoda Sindhu, then automatically it is being given. Only thing is, sometimes you may have to request for it. So once you request it, then if you are not part of Enlist also, you can request. If you are a private organization or private institute, you can request for it. They do provide this. You can make an inquiry, you can contact them, and then you will get this access. Then you enable. Only thing is, you need to maintain a server at your level. It's a very simple server, Linux server, which you can take help of your computer center or take help from any outside service provider. And you have to maintain a server, and it should be always connected to the internet. And then they'll enable the access to which your users will be able to access to whatever e-resources you are subscribing to it. And so there will be no kind of hindrance. Of course, it will be linked to your email access. If you have institution email ID service, then you can link it to that. It's a very good service. I think we as a library need to exploit it and try to make use of this service provided by the institute. And e-training or e-orientation, where that e-training can be provided using any online platform. For example, right now we are on StreamAd. It is a kind of a streaming service for the YouTube or this thing, Facebook. So you can also use the platforms such as Zoom or a Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, or a GeoMeet, which is recently been announced by Geo. So we can use to provide training. Okay, Zoom has a limitation up to 40 minutes. You can freely, otherwise after 40 minutes also you can ask your users to log in. Google Meet, where that until September you can access it. You can umpteen number of hours. It requires only your Gmail account. So through Gmail, you can ask to create an ID, share with your users. You can provide it. Microsoft Teams, it is available for education institutions free of cost. If your institute is implemented it, you can use it in order to provide any webinars or those kind of things. GeoMeet, as you know that it is available for up to 100 users, unlimited time. You can log in and you can create, you can ask the people to join for the training, which you can use. A lot of tutorials also available how to use this technology on the YouTube, which you can use to learn how you can enable the service. Or you can create a short courses, okay, which you can develop using a platforms like Canvas or Coursera. These platforms are available on the internet. Just go there, try to see that. But only thing is, a lot of efforts required from your end. First you need to prepare the content, and you have to provide you to create the short videos also. See, you learn here. See, because nowadays UGC is also asking you how much e-content developed by your faculty. You as a librarian, you are equivalent to a faculty member. So even if you are developed some e-content using these sites, then definitely that will count for your APRs. Okay, so that what will happen if you develop some courses like your plagiarism, for example. So okay, e-reference management tools. If you develop some content for your users, not only it will be used by your users, it can be used by anyone. So you can offer a course also. Of course, you will not be able to offer the degree or certificate on this. Maybe at your college level, you can take a permission, try to issue the certificate. So this will help you to enhance your knowledge about MOOCs, massive open online courses. So using a Canvas or course site, you can develop it. Of course, SWAYAM also can develop it, but for that, there are certain protocols which you need to follow, and you need to request into that or the coordinating agency like IGNOU, and you can develop there also. It is do possible on SWAYAM also. So here is a screenshot of course sites. You can go there, coursesites.com. This is given by Blackboard, which is a very e-learning platform, which is famous all over the world. And they are providing this service for free of charge. So you can go there, you can develop it, you can develop a course and try to offer a course. As I'm telling you, you need to first spend time on this, try to develop a course, try your like-minded people to go through it. If they like it, then you can open it up for your users to know about how ask people to, not only from your college, even as I mentioned, the university as a whole also you can do this. Of course, again, the tutorials are available. It's not on YouTube, even on the course site itself, there are some tools you can check it and try to learn it how you can do this. Even recently, you may be knowing Coursera for campus, which has announced a lot of courses which any institute can come forward and take it. Of course, it's ended now, so some of the institutes in Mumbai and all over India also took advantage of it, and they enabled their users to take the courses free of cost, because Coursera kind of a site, they do charge services. So in summary, I would like to mention that e-services, especially in the present pandemic situation, enable users to get access to e-resources and services from the comforts of their home. So they are there at home, they are maybe having in their native place, wherever they are. So they'll be able to get access to the e-services because they're taking online classes. So it will assist your teachers to make use of e-resource for their courses because they are developing course content. If they don't have access to them because they are scattered all over India, because some of them may be not in Mumbai, they may be outside Mumbai also. They'll be able to get access to those sources and allow students to make best use of these sources for their study and research because your students also in need of the resources. Okay, for example, e-textbooks. How you can make those e-textbooks. For example, there's a textbook but which is not available in form. Is there any alternative for that? You can identify and try to provide access to it. You can encourage your teachers to use the alternative textbook for the course. And also it boosts the use of open access and free resources because now we always talk about open access, open access. Okay, we just only try to openly, this is basically word of mouth, but many times what happens, many of the users don't use it. This is a kind of a situation where you can encourage your users, you can tell about the importance of open access. Definitely your users appreciate, and it may also bring a change in their mindset of the people to start making use of resources, start making publishing in open access. And also a lot of free OERs, open education resources are available, which can also tell them, okay, do you like one best example is OpenCourseWare of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where a lot of course material available. You can show it to your teachers, say this is the kind of course material, hey, come here, use it. And you can also develop this kind of a e-course material and we can post it from the library website so that people will get access to that. And also it will bring a goodwill to libraries and librarians because you are doing so much and wherever you are, I'm not feeling that you are able to go to a college because some of the libraries are also going to the colleges nowadays because of their management is insist them to college. I know that there are a lot of constraints this thing, but constraint is not a thing. We should try to live in this with the constraints. When you try to come out of your comfort zone, you learn more and you of course there are certain limitations also. There are demerits also there in e-service where that will not be able to provide physical services here. You may be limited to only the e-content or you will not be able to see your user whether you may also may not get acknowledgement for the use of resources sometimes because we always say that we don't get acknowledged that whatever we are doing. It is true, but getting acknowledgement is not the kind of things. When you do it, you learn. See, think of your own self. You learn more and you will be much more. For example, you're not confined today, you're in a college, tomorrow you will be in university, tomorrow you will be in a specialized university. For example, take example of Madhi Role. Earlier she was with SP Jain. Now she is with ICT. So like that, you can learn and see if you are more knowledgeable, more learned, then definitely there is a chance of you getting into a better institute in order to work as a librarian. So this is what I would like to mention. And with this, I end my session. I think I hope I'm within the time. So I would like to thank once again ICT and VS College, Madhavi and Meghna, so in order to provide this opportunity for me to share some of my experiences. If you have any questions, then I take it. So thank you very much. Thank you all of you all to for patient. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Let's start with the question and answer questions round. Sir, you mentioned that within libraries you all share the electronic resources, this is the articles, maybe the research. So, would like to know that do these licensing agreement allow us to do that? I mean, what should we look for when we want to know that whether we can go ahead and do this?
Yes, see, the license agreement is very clear written by most of the publishers. You can exchange articles with the other libraries. If they are not written, then you need to clarify with the publishers. Otherwise, because these are as yesterday, Dr. Mehta rightly mentioned that license agreement are a thing that you need to know about that what are the terms and conditions. Sometimes we as a librarian may not be able to see. Like for example, jurisdiction she mentioned about India should be the jurisdiction whenever you sign an agreement. If they are not undertaking, you should insist that. See, these are the kind of things most of the publishers nowadays do allow sharing of resources. Okay, with the libraries, between the libraries, they do allow. If it is not there in your license agreement, you should insist it. Not you please include it because we need to, as a libraries, like how we used to exchange the photocopies, we also exchange the reads. But maybe there could be each publisher may have their own mechanism saying that like Yesterday there was a kind of, she was mentioning about ILL ID they created, DLL some at TMC something they created ID through which they were exchanging. Like that, there could be some kind of mechanism they insist through which you can try to provide. It's possible. It's always possible to share the resources subject to license, whatever is on.
Thank you, sir. Megha, do you have any question?
Sir, can you please elaborate on Google Scholar CASA service?
Yeah, this is a Google Scholar campus activated service. It is a service which is provided by Google Scholar way back in 2017-18 actually. But until recently, till the pandemic came, many of the libraries, none of the libraries I can say, we are using in India. Only now, even many of the publishers are enabling this service. Recently, I got a email from Science Direct saying that now we have enabled through CASA. Okay, until then, even you when look at it on the internet, if you look for CASA, any of this thing, you will not get anything. You will get only the publishers, Gesto providing through CASA, elsewhere providing through CASA kind of a thing. You will not get any content saying somebody has written an article saying that, okay, what is CASA, how it can be used, nothing is available. As of now, even though it has come in way back in 2017 and 18. So it is a kind of service, what Google has done it has partnered with the publishers. Whenever a content, when a user is there in the campus, for example, ICT, within ICT, there are students are there, faculty are there. Whenever they access the resources, whatever it is subscribed by ICT, using Google Scholar, using maybe logging into their Google account and Google Scholar through which they are accessing, or they are directly going to Google Scholar trying to access some of the content which is subscribed by the ICT. In that case, what happens? It remembers, okay, this user is from ICT. When a user goes to his home or his or her home, when they access the content, they immediately user provides a full text access to that. Because it remembers it creates a temporary token, and keeps preserved in the Google Scholar. But only thing is, the student has to use that device what he or she is using. If she is using a mobile phone, access will be available only in mobile phone. She or she will not be able to access from the other devices. But that can also be avoided, provided if the user, if they log in the campus through the Google Scholar, their login ID of Gmail ID, and then access the Google Scholar, then it remembers. In that case, even if they change the device from mobile phone to laptop, then they will be able to access. Because it remembers, they have to log into the Gmail account, then go to Google Scholar, then immediately it remembers, okay, this user is coming from ICT. He or she has access to the resources subscribed by ICT. And you as a librarian need not have to do anything. Only thing your part is you have to educate your users through Google CASA, you are able to access. But in that case, right now it is not possible because all our users are scattered. Okay, but in case you are staying in campus, so if you are campus faculty, so they will be able to get access to from their home if they don't have access. But they are coming, I think, within their IP address range, so they will not have a problem. But any of if you are providing remote access, they can come to your remote access, then access the Google Scholar by login ID. Then for 1 month, that token will be created. Then they need not have to log into your remote access. Without logging into your remote access, 1 month they can access the content, whatever you are providing. But only thing is they need to create those temporary tokens. If they create those temporary tokens, then it is always possible to get access to the subscribed content of the library. I hope I am clear.
So there's another question asking, is INFED free?
Yeah, INFED is free. It's free for all higher education institutes in India. Only thing is they need presently it is free. Future they may start charging. I don't know about that. Present they are very clearly mentioned. Presently we are providing free. Future we may charge. It could be nominal charge because this is an INFED uses institutes. They may not charge heavily, but it is available for all. You need not be a 12B institute or this thing. Nothing. You can approach any institute. Can approach them. They are provided. Unfortunately, you know the number, how many people are obtaining. Hardly there are 140, 150 or 180 institutes are presently using INFED service in India. Which is very unfortunate, which is beyond free of cost, but we are not using it. I think this is the time we should make use of INFED service. We are shortly will be enabling that. We are going for INFED service. Presently, we are through VPN we are providing because we have a limited access to VPN. That's why we are trying to enable it. We will be soon having INFED service at IGI.
So the next question is, what is the difference between remote access and VPN?
See, VPN is a virtual private network. It is a network, kind of a server maintained by a particular institute or a college. Okay. So what happens in the VPN? They get access more than what they're getting. For example, they can come within your LAN. They can get access to the LAN services. Whereas in case of remote access, you will get access only to the e-resources or whatever, wherever those protocols have been allowed. Only those can be accessed. Like e-resource can be. They cannot come into your intranet and try to use services provided within the lab. Like our e-library, they will not be able to access if we provide it to like Infed service or any of the remote access. That is the difference.
So there is one more question asking the only reliable plagiarism checker, which is used by most of the universities, Turnitin. So
Yeah.
can research scholar possess the free access of this anti-plagiarism besides college acquisition?
See,
So
the
can
thing is,
individual?
yeah,
Yes.
you mean to say that plagiarism software, you mean to say how the libraries can provide access to?
No, I think what she meant is that can individuals too have access to such kind of softwares individually instead of
No,
having it through the institute?
yeah, no, but that is possible. That is possible if institute is ready to spend time, money on that. For example, we have Turnitin and IGIDEA. We are given access to all of our faculty members. Okay, we are not given to students, but faculty can use it individually, independently. They can access the content. They can check anything, whatever is being submitted by a student. But only thing is the money. See, those many licenses you need to buy. It's possible. It's possible. And now most of the colleges and the institutes are getting access to Urkun from the InfieldNet, which you can access. If you are not having that, you should go for it. It's again given free of cost. You should go for it because it is given by UGC and you should enable that service and try to make use of it. Of course, there is some limitation in using that services. So, but you can always request them for enhancing.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, the next question is, how far are the free plagiarism checker softwares reliable? Am I audible?
Yes, Megha, you are.
Yeah. The question is, how far are the free plagiarism software reliable?
I'm not getting the question.
Are the free plagiarism softwares reliable?
No, they are not reliable because what happens, they have a limitation and also the content name, whatever you check and they may store it, but it's okay. It's just to check for temporary kind of a thing, not storing the content, you can do it, but they are not full kind of a thing. Always better to use the licensed one. So you can get your institute or library to ask. I think I'll end this session. Maybe Dr. Reddy is waiting and also have one more meeting to attend. So I think we'll end the session. I'm sorry for that because.
No problem.
No problem. So thank you very much, sir, for an extremely informative session. I'm very sure the participants too found it very helpful. It was very systematic presentation which improved our understanding of how do we reach our user community by using various tools. It has made us all aware of the various ways like e-reference service, dynamic websites or web portal. We can have our library's digital presence. Social networking tools which we all use comfortably otherwise, how it can be used effectively to reach out to our community. How we can conduct webinars, online training programs for our users, how we can learn ourselves using YouTube videos. I think with this kind of guidance to our librarian friends, I'm sure they will go ahead and explore further these possibilities and try to reach their user community successfully or have their presence on the internet. Thank you once again, sir. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If anyone user have any query, they can send an email to me. You can ask if I'll whatever best possible from my end. And thank you.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I request Dr. Meghna Sanjeeva to proceed with the program further.
Thank you, Madhvi. Over the previous sessions, we have seen how collection can be developed and access can be provided to the resources. The focus of the academic libraries is to support teaching, learning, and research in their parent institutions. Research plays an important role in the institutes of higher education. Many institutions, universities are being ranked and funded based on their research output. Libraries are providing services, resources, and expertise to support every phase of research from discovery and design to creation and sharing. In this session, we will now see how libraries can provide various research support services using new and applicable research tools, consultation, and training to help researchers understand the new research process, analyze, manage, and present research results more efficiently. We have Dr. Umesha Reddy with us for this session. He is the librarian at the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Pune. He is a science graduate and holds a MLISC degree, PGDLIM, and a PhD in Library and Information Science. Sir has more than 20 years of professional experience, has established a state-of-art library at IISER Pune, and has published several research papers. He has served as the coordinator of the IISER Library Consortium and is a member of the Library Advisory Board of various publishers. As a recipient of the Namaste Fellowship in the year 2015, Sir has worked at the University of Göttingen in Germany. His current research interests include research support services, content management systems, scholarly communication, bibliometrics, and scientometrics. We welcome you, sir, to deliver this talk on research support services and tools. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, please go to the next slide.
Next.
Yeah, this is the layout of my talk. Yeah, please go to the next slide. Yeah, I was, telling you that the importance of the. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was telling you about the importance of research output in the higher educational institutes because of this NIRF ranking and other ranking agencies. Now, higher educational institutes are taking this research output as a, they are dealing it with very seriously, and they are, encouraging scientists to publish more and more papers and work more and more on, research projects. So here we have an, important opportunity for all the library professionals to look for initiating new services to support to enhance research output of the institute. Thereby we can help institutes to raise their profile or visibility in the society. So pattern of scientific research is moving towards digitization and data intensification and also collaboration. So to help changing pattern of the scientific research, librarians need to initiate innovative and effective services. Librarians also market their skills as research partners in the institute and also position themselves more centrally in the scholarly research life cycle. so that they can earn respect from the user community. They also earn recognition from the institute authorities. Next, please. So this is the research life cycle one has to understand to develop the research support services in the institute. There are different stages of research life cycle. Next, please. The first stage is prepare, where researcher does the background reading, and he always he looks for some new ideas to begin with his research. He decides on the topic based on the available information. Then he formulates the research question to seek the answers. Then researcher thinks of funding. Researcher applies for different funding agencies to seek the funding. Next is the then he plans for the project. Once he is ready with all these things, he plans for the project. Here, the library professionals, we can advise them on, we can give them research consultations. We can tell them that these are all the funding agencies which are useful for them. Then we have to keep that information ready with the library whenever they approach us. We can also help them to formulate funding applications to get to be successfully get the funding from different agencies. Next, please. Next, So here the next stage is the gathering the information. Here basically we have to help them. Here we have a very important role here, so that they just know how to collect the information, but we have to educate them how to do a systematic literature review. Literature review is very important for any researcher. Basically, just to know what kind of research has already been done in the particular domain, and whether if it is there, if my research is going to add any knowledge to the existing knowledge, or is it going to can you please put it on slideshow mode, please? Yeah, okay. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, next. Yeah, previous one. Sorry. Yeah. Here the data analysis in the next stage is creating the data based on the information available. So the researcher tries to make data analysis, and he starts writing the report. Where we can help them with different writing support tools. Then we can also help them to for bibliographic management. We can advise them what kind of reference management tools are available to manage their references, because many times researchers work with different collaborators. It's not easy for them to manage all the sources that they have with them. If they have a reference management tool, it becomes easy for them to manage simultaneously. Then we can also advise them or educate them on how to comply with the copyright and the plagiarism part. Like many a times we see that the final year students, when they're ready with their final year thesis, and it's mandatory here for them to submit thesis in the digital repository. So when they submit, we try to ask them or guide them whether you have a third party copyright permission and all, because they use a lot of pictures and other things. Then also at least they need to give proper acknowledgement. They need to give credit if they are taking any third party sources or copying any third party sources in their material. Next, please. So here comes once research results are out, then the research data is very important, that need to be preserved for the future use. And also some other like the other researcher also may use the same data for some other purposes. So for future use, one has to preserve the research data. Next, please. Yeah. So when researcher or the scientist is ready with his research results, next stage is to share the research results. Unless until it is shared, there is no value for this. In terms of in order to share the research results, he can either publish it in books or traditional journals, open access publishing. There are many models of open access publishing. Then either conference papers or even in social media. So there are many channels of communication. Researcher can use any one of the channels and or multiple channels to share the data. So once the results are out, once the publication is there in place, then next stage is to evaluate the research results or evaluate the research output for its quality and impact. So quality and impact plays an important role, because more the quality, more the impact, more will be the citation. So all the quality of the research is measured in terms of citation. So it's very, very important in increasing the scientist profile as well as the institute profile. So one has to get involved. How to get involved in the research process? So we have to first, know researchers, the process and the challenges. It varies from institute to institute. So it all depends upon the local environment. So there may be, one researcher may want something else, other researcher may want some other resources for doing the research. We have to understand their needs. Then wherever there is an opportunity, we have to seize the opportunity. To play a library role and make them aware that we are there to help them. We have to be, if possible, we have to participate actively in the institutional committees, especially the academic committees. So if we are part of the committees, we have, we can always give inputs as far as library support is concerned. So that helps us a lot, especially when the institute is making a new policy or strategy with regard to academic activities. So developing a good understanding of institutional strategy and what the library can do to support them. So this is possible if you are becoming if you are a member, or at least have a regular chat with the deans and other concerned authorities to know their needs. So one doesn't need to know everything in the beginning. So we need to have an approach of problem-based learning. So I don't know, but I will find out. That means, whenever there is a problem, in the beginning, we don't have to know much about, or we don't have to know everything about the research process or anything for that matter. But as and when we proceed, we try to understand, we try to find the solution, we try to answer the problems of the research community. So we have to, learning is a never-ending process. We have to learn. We have to readily learn from, colleagues, fellows, or anybody for that matter. And with all these things, or with all these, approaches, we can definitely achieve success with our work. So, what are the critical roles for the library professionals in the, wider range of content? The content should be, again, relevant and active. So if you have just for the sake of having a content, if you have, then if it is not used, then that's of no use. Then training researchers to find and use the ever increasing volume. So whatever collection or the content that we have in the library, that should be used. So we have to make sure that the users are using, we call it as active collection. Whatever we have in the library, that should be an active collection. So promoting new models of dissemination and publication. So a publisher, the researchers are always, they look for some kind of, high impact journals, just to see that, they get more citations and all. But there are a good number of open access journals, which are these days, coming up very well and receiving a good number of citations. So we have to educate them about all new models of dissemination and publications. Providing advice on IPR and copyright is an important service. Then promote and support good practice in reference management, that I have already explained to you. Use domain knowledge to look for opportunity. to be useful. So we know many things about scholarly publishing and research support tools and research writing tools. So we need to look for opportunity to help the users so that they feel that library is of use to them. So we have to keep on promoting our library services. Especially we have to take care of skeptical audiences. So many times it so happens that we keep promoting, but the same set of users are using the library. But we sometimes we tend to ignore skeptical users. So to know all the kind of problems what they are facing in using library services, it's a good idea to collect feedback or maybe go for an online poll or something like that, so that to address specific problems of individual users to make them use the library better. So raise the profile of the library as a provider of valuable support to research. So we have to initiate new services or effective and efficient services. That is what makes the the profile of the library better. So apply the embedded librarian model, which means early in the traditional days, user used to come to library to get the information. But now, being an embedded library, there is no boundary for the library, so it's a beyond library walls, boundary walls. So we have to be 24/7. We have to make the information reach the user wherever the user is. So if you look at this picture, the confused researcher wants to take help from the reference librarian, and I can't read the bottom line here. It's something says that research makes sense for the researcher after meeting the librarian. If that happens, it would be really a great achievement for any library professional. So this is a beautiful picture, and this quote, a very recent quote by Sri Ravi Shankar ji. It was posted on, I can't see the bottom line again, it's posted on something Religion World, and he compares, Ravi Shankar ji compares library knowledge with that of our consciousness. Like library has thousands of books. For librarian, it doesn't need to know each and every book by heart, but librarian knows where, what, and how to retrieve a book based on the user need. Same thing, same way, our consciousness also has a abode of knowledge. For a physical body, it doesn't need to know each and everything what is stored in the knowledge. But when our mind becomes standstill, when we are mind is absolutely free, then mind acts like a librarian. It retrieves the required information, whatever is required. So it's a beautiful comparison. And same way in the library also, whenever there is a need for new service, then we have to be ready and initiate new service to meet the information need of the users. So what is research support from the library? So research support, it's basically there is no definition as such. Whatever we do in the library to help a researcher to carry out the research work may be called as research support services. The library is a support service as such, and all services enabling researchers to spend more time on actual research and less time on administrative tasks could be regarded as research support service. So what are the skills required to provide research support services? These are all the different skill sets required for library professionals to provide effective and efficient research support services in the library. I'm going a little fast. So these are the different kinds of research support services one can think of in the library, but apart from this, there could be many other. But I have tried to collate some of the information which we are also practicing here. So first thing is to have evidence-based relevant collection and seamless access. So evidence-based relevant collection means the collection, whatever we have in the library, should be relevant and active. And maybe it's good idea to, as far as the e-resources are concerned, maybe it's a good idea to have a trial access and request users to evaluate the resources. If they find it useful, let them recommend it to the library, so that with that we can have maintain the quality collection in the library. And whatever we have, especially in this pandemic time, providing remote access to all the e-resources is very much important. So one has to have that service in place. Then you already know reference and information services, document delivery services, current awareness services. These are all part of research support services. Then we have interlibrary loan, plagiarism checking software. We have service. We have different softwares for that. We can go for any one of that. And orientation and demonstrations are very important to make user understand the new tools or maybe new services, new resources. Then specialized training programs with the help of different agencies or the publishers. We can organize different like for SciFinder or MathSciNet for that matter. They are very specialized bibliographic databases. They need users need some kind of training to use them, so we can organize such programs. Author workshops are very important because that is what actually as per whatever our experience goes, whenever we conduct author workshops, we see good number of participants. That's because researchers are directly connected with publishing, then writing manuscript, all those copyright issues. All these things can be covered in the author workshops. We need to manage research data management. Of course, we are yet to work on this part here at IISER Pune, but one has to deal with research data management to provide research support services. Then research impact measurement. There are many good number of bibliometrics softwares available. We can use them. We have to develop research guides to give in-depth knowledge about a specific domain to the researchers. So for that we need research guides. Then research commons. These days, as I mentioned, scientific research or any research for that matter is moving towards collaborative mode. So research commons is a collaborative place wherein a group of researchers get together and they discuss about their own research project and so on. So it comes with a different set of infrastructure. Then institutional repository play an important role these days, because institutes institutes also giving very good importance to the library, because libraries are successfully managing institutional repositories. So it is increasing value or increasing profile of the library within the institute and even outside the institute as well. Scholarly publishing, we need to have knowledge about scholarly publishing, different models of publishing, and I can't see the last line. Maybe it's utility. Yeah, next please. Sorry, I can't see the last line. Yeah, this is what the research commons looks like. So it's a collaborative space. So mainly this research commons, it involves different like if you talk about space, it has desk space, then discussion rooms, launch equipment. We have to provide whiteboards. It's enabled with LED screens, laptops, video conferencing, iPads, then all other modern gadgets. Then it is also enabled with some other wireless lockers and other photocopying, scanning machines, etc. So these are the different tools one can use to support research services in the institute. As far as literature review is concerned, there are good number of bibliographic databases, general databases like Web of Science, Scopus are available, and MathSciNet specific to mathematics, then SciFinder specific to chemists. We can use these bibliographic databases to do a systematic literature review. For domain-specific softwares, like we have ChemDraw, Then Cambridge structural databases. Again, most of the chemists are using these databases. For reference management tools such as open source Jotera is available, Mendeley is available, EndNote of course a commercial one, but it's also a popular reference management tool. So statistics analysis software such as Stata, SPSS, SAS, these are all the tools for the research tools one can have in the library. Then plagiarism checkers, there are good number of open source plagiarism checkers are available. Even Urkund is also free plagiarism being provided by INCLIBNET to all the higher educational institutes in India. Turnitin is a commercial and paid one. We are, so here at IISER Pune, we have this Turnitin. We have access to Turnitin. Then writing support tools like grammar checkers and other tools can also be very useful. A bit about our ICERs. So ICERs are initiated by Government of India. Currently there are 7 ICERs: Bhopal, Behrampur, Mohali, Pune, Kolkata, Thiruvananthapuram. And this ICERs offer different programs in basic sciences like BSMS, then integrated PhD, then postdoctoral programs. ICER Pune has been ranked 25th the overall NIRF ranking 2020, and it was ranked 20th under Nature Young University ranking. So this is about annual publications output, and as you can see in 4 years, that 2015, 16, 17, and 18, you see significant increase in the online publications. That is because the library played an important role in negotiating with the Royal Society of Chemistry in obtaining free tokens for publishing papers. This was done through ICER consortium. We have a separate consortium to negotiate for commonly required resources. So by using those free tokens, we have encouraged, we have requested our scientists to publish papers in the open access. So that's the reason we see higher number of online open access papers in those 3 years. As of now, we have published there are about 3,220 papers from different streams. So this is the Srinivasa Ramanujan Library in IISER Pune. We have good number of print collections and also a good number of electronic resources. So this is the website of library wherein we try to organize all the web links for the e-resources that we have in the library, so that to make the user easily access the contents and other yeah. So this is the evidence based collection and access to high quality contents. Just give me a minute once. I'm sorry, batteries. Yeah, sorry for that. My battery is low. Yeah, so what we do is, we try to have the active collection in the library, in the relevant collection. So there is downward, pressure on institutional budgets. So we try to negotiate with a better terms and conditions through consortium, and so that we can have more number of resources with less number of money. And we also have this. We do thorough check and we collect the counter statistics at the time of renewal. Based on the downloads, we decide whether to renew collection or not. Next, please. Next. Yeah, so as far as print collection is concerned, we are really dependent on these exhibitions. This is not the general exhibition, but we try to have a subject-specific exhibition so that we can make our users aware of new publications, and also they can browse through the books and decide whether if it is really useful, they recommend it for library, or they may buy it through their grants. Next, please. This is our online, public catalog, and wherein we have see what we have done is we have integrated mark records of ebooks in this catalog so that users, whenever browse the catalog, simultaneously they can search print as well as electronic books, and if it is available in electronic book and we have provided full text links in the catalog itself, they can gain access to the full text there. We have automated completely the library, because our researchers they work late night, and it's like all the day they work. So library is open all the day, and since the circulation is based on RFID, and also since we have enabled biometric authentication, so anytime they can get into the library and get the books issued for their research. So when we receive new books, we keep them on display for some time to make these make users aware of new publications. This is the monthly bulletin we bring out every month to circulate among users, and this is the format of the record that we include in the monthly bulletin, wherein we hyperlink with the publisher catalog or the Amazon site to enable users to read thoroughly about the book, like what we include in the library. And another thing we do in the library is we write recommender name in the book itself, so that whenever users browse through the book, if they find the book useful, they at least thank the recommender, or if they don't find it useful, at least they can let us know that book is not good for them. So we have all kinds of free resources in the library, from full text, bibliographic, and tools, or even video. Jove is a video journal. Yeah, this Jove is a video journal. I believe IISER Pune is the first institute to subscribe Jove journal in India. It's a special journal, peer-reviewed scientific journal that publishes experimental methods in video formats. So for providing the remote access to the e-resources what we have in the library, we have developed a remote access portal. Using remote access, through this portal, we provide remote access to all the users. So we conduct orientation training programs regularly to educate our users. This is one such author workshop we have conducted last year by this was conducted by editorial team of Institute of Physics. So these are the new publications. We try to display first page of each new publication of IISER Pune community in the library to instigate interest among users, and also make users aware of new publications which are coming out from IISER Pune. This is again, monthly bulletin we bring out about our own publications of our own community. Yeah, this is the digital repository, managed by library using DSpace software. This is, up-to-date repository in terms of the publications, MS thesis, and PhD thesis. We have all the records in full text here, and it's mandatory here in the institute for the students to submit their thesis, a final version of thesis, in the repository before they leave the institute. So these are all different collections of the repository. Yeah, we have integrated this Altmetrics tool in this DSpace so that it collects social media citations and other things. We also have audio-visual collection in the library, which we display for some time for the awareness purpose. Again, we have some utility services like printing, photocopy, scan. It's all self-help. Library professionals are not involved in it. We just manage it, but they do on their own. So as I mentioned, we have some tools, like these are all bibliography tools. We have Web of Science. We have SciFinder, MathSciNet for mathematicians. This is CCDC again, structural database for chemists, basically. ChemDraw, again a tool. As I mentioned, we have Turnitin similarity checking software, and it's mandatory. We have made an institutional policy that whether it is manuscript or thesis, MS thesis or PhD thesis, it has to be done through Turnitin, that too through the library. So when we provide the report to the committee decides and whether it is acceptable limit or not. So next is the Grammarly writing tool. So this is the new website that we are creating now, where we are integrating all the research support services that are required for our research community. Hopefully, in a week's or week's time, it should be up on the line. So in conclusion, I would say, we need to help institutions to attract top researchers, because top researchers will attract to the reputed institutions. So reputed institutions, many factors contribute, but library also can contribute to enhance the reputation of the institute by having a good collection, quality collection, and also quality staff members, and also the good building, that also matters. And promote and explore new technologies. We need to keep exploring new technologies and the new models of scholarly communications. Create repositories to increase the visibility of the institution and raise its research profile. If we have a good repository, that will definitely enhance the visibility of our research output. Connect with researchers to enhance the value of the library services, and provide dedicated spaces with a better work environment for researchers, and provide easy access to high quality content. Libraries are physical manifestations. So these days, because of the online resources, people say that physical space is not needed. But since the beginning, libraries are a reflection of the intellectual output of the institute. It's actually value of the academy and of scholarship. As I said, we need to really market our skills as research partners, and position ourselves more centrally in the research process to achieve success whatever we do in the library. And one last thing I would like to mention here is we need to have three things. As far as the library professionals are concerned, we have to be very polite with the users, and we have to be very patient with the management or the institute authority, and we have to be very responsive to the situation, responsive, we have to provide responsive leadership to achieve success. That's all from my side.
Thank you, sir. We'll take a few questions now.
Sure, certainly. Sorry, I was a bit fast because of the time constraint.
Technical difficulties, yeah, we do understand.
Yeah.
Sir, you spoke about free tokens from Royal Society of Chemistry.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate on that?
So that was actually introduced by Royal Society of Chemistry. That model was called as gold for gold. So what they did was, they have given us some free tokens worth of the amount what we pay to them, against the subscription. So at that time, each token was costing us 1,600 pounds. But they have given it free against our subscription amount. In a year, we used to get around 15 tokens. We could publish about 15 open access papers So during that 4 years time, I think we could publish more than 60, 70 papers.
So is it that for open, I mean, this is in continuation of what you answered just now. So is it that there was like RAC, I remember, had come up with a scheme where you have to pay certain umbrella amount and then your authors get tokens? Is it that, or it was
No,
just
no,
for
no.
it?
It is nothing to do with authors. It is nothing to do with, like charging APC to individual authors. But it was the agreement between libraries and the publisher. Publisher agreed to give free tokens against the subscription amount.
So
Sir,
this
you
is
mentioned.
primarily to avoid the double dipping, is it?
Sorry. Can you come?
It is primarily to avoid the double dipping issue, sir, right?
Yeah, see, that time we had an opportunity to negotiate because we were negotiating for all ICERs through our ICER consortium. There were 5 ICERs that time. So they agreed for this because they also wanted to introduce their products to ICERs. So they agreed. But now, since last year, they have stopped this.
Sir, you mentioned in the writing tools which help us writing help tools. You mentioned Grammarly as well as Ginger. So, do you think Grammarly is helpful for scientific writing too?
No,
I
it's
mean,
not
for
helpful for, yeah, correct. You are right. It's not
yeah.
helpful for scientific writing because Grammarly only checks for, words. It won't understand the concept or the idea what scientist is putting into the paper. So one has to be very careful while checking with the, because these are all administrative things while writing, especially for, the funding applications. Very much useful there. But at the same time, if they use it for manuscript, it's not that of use.
Okay. Sir, are you all using Grammarly as well? Ginger as well at your institute?
No. We are using only Grammarly.
Only Grammarly. Okay. Thank you.
So you mentioned about the Arithmetic tool being integrated with your DSpace.
That's correct.
Yeah, can you please explain a bit more about it?
No, it's a open source tool. Anybody can, implement it with, integrate with DSpace. So it's automatic. Once it is integrated, whenever paper is cited cited on, Facebook or Mendeley or Twitter or some other, social sites are there. So it collects citations automatically and it showcases all the results there in the paper. It's in the DSpace repository itself. And when you click on the numbers, it actually takes to that particular site. Like, if you click on the number there on Mendeley, it takes you to Mendeley. Even if you click on the Twitter icon there, it takes you to Twitter and tells you who are all, quoted or, cited your paper.
And have you all started research data management at your library?
No. I mentioned that we are yet to work on that part. Yeah, we are yet to work on it. And but now we are.
More questions, Madhuri?
Yeah. So for this author workshops you mentioned,
Yes.
so those are conducted by the library.
No, we organize author workshops, but we invite a representative of publishers, especially the editorial teams. For orientation and all, we invite representatives. But for the conducting author workshops, especially we invite editorial teams, so that they can the users can discuss in detail with them, and they get to know what is the review process and all rejection rates and all those things. They can directly discuss with the editors.
Okay. I think there are no more questions right now. So thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session where you outlined the research support services, considering the research life cycle. The services that you outlined are all taking care of the various aspects of the research life cycle. At the same time, you emphasized on embedded librarianship, on research data management, which are the new things that all of us have to gear up for. Thanks a lot for that. Sir, your description about your library and the services that are offered in your library are also great learning for all of us. And we will surely remember your mantra of being polite and all the other things with the users. It was indeed very nice having you here, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for the opportunity. Sorry for the inconvenience and the disturbance in between. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, they are beyond our control. It's okay. That is beyond our control. And I think all the participants also will understand that. And after this session, I think everybody will forget about the technical issues. So that is absolutely fine, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So we conclude today's session, and tomorrow we meet again at 2:30 p.m. for the next two sessions for the third day. Thank you.